This is Dominic here, the founder member of Fire and Security of India and the founder of Critical Utility Services. I'm so glad that today's topic is catching up the attention of everyone, which is simple as evacuation. How safe we are in a building, how safe our colleagues and whether it could be parents and children can evacuate when it comes to emergency. Almost 15% of the populations are disabled. If you look at those, I'm unable to share because I still have a problem in my laptop. Almost 15% of populations are disabled. Out of that, India has 121 crore population. That is almost 2.68 people are disabled. With just 3% of India's building accessible. If you look at the complete building, the statistics, only 3% of the buildings are accessible for disabled. And it's a huge disadvantage for people who are mobility impaired. Our Delhi High Court, the new Delhi High Court, intervened and criticized the sluggish pace of which access audit of the disabled are moving. The government of India, the court has taken up very seriously, and to ensure that every building in the country need to be disabled friendly by 2022, which is next year. I don't think that's going to happen again. So if you look at what about the emergency evacuation when it comes to fire or an earthquake or any calamities? We're not supposed to use elevator because we simply put a sticker saying that in case of emergency, do not use elevator. Have you ever thought how a person who cannot walk on the stairwell or run on a stairwell can safely evacuate? It's a very important subject that every elevator, when it's not supposed to work, you should have a system to evacuate. You need to have some kind of mechanism to evacuate out of the building. We, as a responsible society, whether it is FSA or a Focus, are running through various seminar and webinar, trying to educate every developer in the country and every society president, condominium, the unions, to ensure that every floor they have an evacuation chair. It is not a cost. Anything that want to save a life is not a cost to the property. It's a very serious matter that every building need to be safely evacuated. I have with me Mr. Ashok Menon, very distinguished personality in India, former director of Goa Fire Service and Emergency. Having known to him for many years, he has made the Goa state one of the safest states in the country. I have seen him the advanced technology being used in the fire department and also advocating the use of evac chair in all the building in Goa. I would now welcome Mr. Ashok Menon to give his opening remarks. Over to Mr. Ashok Menon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. KP Dominic. At the outset, Mr. KP Dominic, MD Blue and Grey Management Consultant, India Private Limited, for having organized this very useful webinar on evacuation. It says emergency evacuation to everyone. The topic emergency evacuation to everyone is very important in today's context of emergency evacuation is the urgent immediate egress or escape of people away from an area, an imminent threat, ongoing threat I, being the firefighter, a first responder in any situation of fire and emergency, we always pray to God that we should not enter into any occupancies where we will have to evacuate to safety. So far, I have been lucky enough in my 35 years of service that wherever we have been, we have doused and lives have been saved. And that means the response time was minimum and the evacuation was not required. So that is one area. Benchmark evacuation time from and conditions is established through using best practices, regulations, or such as modeling the flow of people in a building. Consideration of person is very important. This incident, an incident which I personally was witness to, where we were conducting a mock drill exercise. There in a high-rise building, there was one gentleman who was a special, who was a disabled person. My firefighters who was conducting the mock exercise of evacuation, this disabled gentleman mentioned that, how are you going to take me, evacuate me? So at that moment, I would share, it's a real, and it appeared in the press the next day. The firefighter said, you hold on, this is just a mock exercise. You be there wherever, we will not evacuate you. So that is the time when I realized that the firefighter was so naive that he did not know how to evacuate a person. And then followed the seminar and the training for the firefighters, how to evacuate special disabled people in such eventuality. It is crucial that every user get out the building or to a safe place in the building. This is also the persons with disabilities or the non-ambulatory people. Regulations such as building codes can be used to minimize the threat triggering the evacuation and optimize the need to self-evacuate without. In the state of Goa, we are we have mandated the regulations such as the National Building Code, the IS codes of practice, and wherever possible, the NFPA standards for ensuring fire and life safety implementation. The evacuation strategies depends upon the nature of building and the occupants' characteristics. For most buildings, immediate and general evacuation of occupants to the street or other exterior place of safety in the event of fire is the accepted norm. This is common practice for occupancies involving residential houses, hotels, restaurants, movie theaters, educational institutions, and other low-rise buildings. In the normal course, evacuation starts if the automatic or manual fire alarm system is initiated, where NFPA 101 Life Safety Code is accepted and subject to approval of authority having jurisdiction. Alarm sequence can provide a 3-minute window for investigation before the general evacuation is given. This is same, it is also practiced 15908, where the stages of general alarm to be maintained before general evacuation is given. In most locations, total evacuation immediately or very soon after the discovery of fire is the most conservative and the best response. Immediate total evacuation always be desirable or feasible. Healthcare and detention centers may operate under conditions that prevent such evacuation. Several different related concepts are recognized when immediate total evacuation is not possible or desired. Then the option is partial or zoned evacuation, phased evacuation, delayed evacuation, and defend evacuation. So with these few words of the keynote address as requested by Mr. Dominic, I'm very eager to listen to our on today's webinar. And I'm sure that the participants who are here with us will take away. The takeaways from today's discussion would be very educative and informative. With these few words, I thank once again Mr. KP Dominic for having invited me for this very important webinar on evacuation. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for wonderful words and kind words, and also emphasizing the importance that why evacuation is should be made part of the building occupants process. I'm sure you will, though you told me that you need to, attend your daughter's health, and you will continue to be there on the mobile. I'm sure there'll be a few questions that we may require your assistant to answer to those. So whenever possible, please log in once again, sir, and we look forward for your support. Thank you very much. God bless you, sir, once again.
I will.
And here, Etienne.
Hello.
I know. Welcome. Our next keynote address is Etienne from UK. He is the director of EVAC Chair with vast experience and knowledge on evacuation. He's going to talk to us about the product that they have developed and developing, and the new factory they have set up in UK. Now they're spreading their wing all across the globe. These chairs have saved many human lives, and also is going to talk about the global standard that has been practiced world over, especially in Europe, how they are, passing the legislation, how everybody is taking it very seriously to ensure that everybody has a right to evacuate. So let's listen to our colleague Etienne. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dominic, and good evening, everybody, or good morning, wherever you are in the world. Let me share my screen, and hopefully everybody can see this.
Yes, we can see you.
Excellent, thank you. So let's start the this part of the presentation, and thank you, Mr. Malan, for the introduction. EVAC Chair International, or EVAC Chair, just want to quickly run through, as Dominic said, who we are, what we do, the products, why, and then lead on to what code of practice, best practices, or what kind of legislation exists across the world. I think the next speaker, Rameshwari, will then lead us to what is more specific about India. So I shall leave this expertise to her and take you through the rest of the world. So about EVAC Chair. So we are very much about ensuring that anybody, everybody, you in the audience, me, everybody can evacuate any building, wherever you are. You can get out of that building safely and in the quickest and safest fashion. So that's who we are. EVAC Chair will make sure that everybody gets evacuated. How do we do that? By being manufacturer, designer, developer of the products based in the UK. To cement our vision, we simply apply core values, as you can see on the screen. So the innovation is obviously what enables us to to make sure that what's next, how can we make sure that this evacuation can happen in the best fashion? Collaborate with, today is an example of collaboration with a panel of speakers that we have, adapt and deliver the best means of evacuation. So we are located in the UK, in Birmingham specifically, in a brand new factory we've just moved into 18 months ago, actually, from where we design, manufacture, and supply the world across all 6 continents with our range of evacuation chairs. We've been doing this for well over 40 years. How did it all started? As you can see, a gentleman in New York, his wife, who unfortunately had suffered some medical conditions in her youth, actually worked on the 38th floor of one of the New York skyscraper. And like most or all of these skyscrapers, they have fire situations that lead into evacuation. However, David's wife was unable to evacuate, and he felt totally scared about the prospect that potentially one evening, his wife would not come home. So he decided to take in his own hands the initial design of what then became an evacuation chair. He did that very much in his spare time, but very much about making sure that his wife was coming back home. That led to what we'll see next about a range of products. But in the meantime, it's been recognized. The evacuation chairs, the evac chairs, have been recognized by some symbolic organization out there. To top it all, Dominique mentioned it earlier, the picture you see on your right is the very evac chair, the actual unit that enabled John Abruzzo to evacuate the Twin Towers on the very day of the 9/11 attacks. So he was on a very high floor of the building, and he was a wheelchair-bound person, and he was able to evacuate the buildings just before what we all know happened next. So that chair is now actually shown at the Memorial Museum in New York. The chairs are have been, we'll cover that in a few slides later, have been proven to be the safest and the fastest, and that's very important, and I will reiterate it later. Fastest is that it doesn't take any longer to evacuate a building, whether you're in that evac chair or whether you're evacuating yourself by your own means, and that's very important. The evac chairs are not only strong, but they are light and do not require a large amount of strength to be utilized. So a teenager could evacuate someone like me. I'm 6'2" and 17 stone, and I don't need someone stronger than me to evacuate me. A kid can do it, and that's the beauty of evac chairs. This is a sample of the range. So starting with the most commonly used, 80% of buildings that have an evac chair will have the 300H. It's our most commonly used device unit. It's only 9.5 kilos, and we can have a patient or a passenger of up to 182 kilos. This enables the descent and evacuation of the person. The 500H is of same purpose, but with the additional capacity in terms of the weight of the passenger to 227 kilos. As you'll notice at the front, there are some handles, because with such a weight, it is recommended that a second person is located at the front to prevent any topple over. The 600H is the 300H with the additional ability to go up. Before the seminar started, I was talking to our fellow speaker, an architect, who was talking about instances where we've got 2 or 3 steps to go up. So with the 600H, we can do that. The 700H is very specific, and no doubt you will perhaps have had situations where you've got to escape through a spiral staircase. Well, the 700H is very much about these spiral staircases. The 110 is a variance for narrow staircase, and the 200H is, it's not always an evacuation through stairs. It can be a simple evacuation in an horizontal manner. So the 200H provides that. I'm just going to run through a video to show you the latest improvement and changes we've carried on the range of chair. In addition to these improvements that have been carried out into the range in the last year, we have also just released our first powered chair, which I was talking earlier about the 600H that provides the ability to go up a few stairs. But there are situations where the people to be evacuated are located in a basement, or the evacuation is upwards, and it is important to have this support of power to that effect. So the 900H is our first electrified, motorized, powered chair, and I will also run through a quick video to introduce it in more details.
EVAC chair. Emergency evacuation for everyone. With over 35 years of experience, we are leaders in design and manufacturing of evacuation chairs. We're committed to providing the mobility impaired with the best possible means of emergency evacuation and are trusted and relied upon in emergency situations to assist in saving people's lives. The 900H Power is a 24-volt lithium-ion battery-operated motorized evacuation chair. Designed for one-person operation, its powered belt track system reduces manual handling and facilitates a smooth, safe and quick method of upward or downward evacuation. One fully charged battery provides enough power to last for 150 flights of stairs, giving you complete peace of mind that you can quickly evacuate the mobility impaired in an emergency. With a maximum payload capacity of 160 kilograms, 25 stone, the Power 900H can accommodate a wide range of passengers. Quick and easy to deploy and operate, it makes an emergency evacuation effortless for the operator and smooth for the passenger. The easy-to-use control pad gives the operator the power to choose the speed and direction of the evacuation, upward or downward. The 900H Power is a 24-volt lithium-ion battery-operated motorized evacuation chair. Designed for one-person operation, its powered belt track system reduces manual handling and facilitates a smooth, safe, and quick method of upward or downward evacuation. Book your free evacuation assessment today. EVAC Chair, emergency evacuation for everyone.
So the range of chairs that you've just seen has been rolled out for the past however many years with several iterations to all these locations and brands that have used it with confidence. Some of which you will recognize straight away. And I know we've just had the World Cup, so I thought I'd highlight in the middle of the screen that a number of the pitches, of cricket pitches, are fully equipped with a means of evacuation for the very much supporters of cricket. A few remarks I'll let you read from some of our customers. Give you time to read them quickly. What's important on that screen, and that you might have seen from the previous slide, is the product. So we obviously not only design and manufacture the product, but we're always very eager to not only supply the evac chairs as the unit, but to ensure that training and maintenance, which is highlighted through ISO 13485. The evac chairs are class 1 medical devices, and as such, they need to be maintained, and that's very important to us. So it's not just about manufacturing the product. To enable people to evacuate, we need to make sure that the right people are trained, and then the device will operate when it needs to operate. So I shall move on to some code of practice, best practices, global standards. What I'll do first is ensure that we're all on the same page as to what who we're talking about here, the users of, or who will need an evacuation chair. Put very in the most straightforward way, we all going to need an evacuation chair. We're all potential users of evacuation chairs, of evac chairs. Mobility impairment is not limited to people in a wheelchair. Mobility impairment is for everyone. We, at any time of our life, will be a mobility impaired person, whether it's through the age, whether it's through physical activities that we do, get injured. Some individuals are not actually aware, but could have a panic attack during an emergency, but they won't know that until that very day. So it's very important that we recognize and we do not limit the concept of an evacuation chair, an evac chair, to be suitable or used by a person in a wheelchair, but that everybody is concerned. On another token, we have where you work, where you live, where you go on holiday, where you travel. You will always come across a mean to identify a fire, an emergency situation, whether it's a fire alarm system, whether it's a fire extinguisher, whether it's a fire protection system, etc., etc. We seem to be surrounded by means to identify that there is a fire or an emergency situation around us. So the next question that is very important to answer is, how do we evacuate? How do we provide a mean of evacuation to everybody, to the mobile as well as the mobility impaired? And as you know, we very often fall into this idea that we'll know there's a fire, but we won't know how to evacuate everyone. And that's very important. So when you see one of these in a building, we should see one of them, one of these too, one evac chair. And in fact, as it happened, where I am staying as we speak, there's very much an extinguisher next to our evac chair on the wall. So when we come to evacuating, again, it's very important that we ensure the evacuation procedure and process encompass not only the abled, but the mobility impaired. And that is very important. We'll talk about evacuation planning later. I mentioned earlier, and it's supported by a study that was done in 2013 with the University of Greenwich, where they reviewed and studied the means of evacuation for mobility impaired. And as I said earlier, it was documented and highlighted that the use of an evac chair do not prevent the speed of evacuation of the able-bodied as well as the mobility impaired. And in fact, the way the evac chair is designed is that you can concurrently run the chair down the stairs as well as the able-bodied evacuating. So there is no such thing about the evac chair prevents the others from evacuating or reduces the evacuation speed of a building. But if anything, it provides a means for everybody to evacuate at the same time. So as Dominique mentioned earlier, we thought we could take a quick round the world overview of what exists around us that we might not actually be aware that already exist, or what has been implemented over the years to encompass the evacuation and looking after the mobility impaired. So if we start with the overall picture, well, there are over 200 countries in the world, and the vast majority, 99%, are members of the United Nations. There is actually a convention on the rights of persons with disability, and this 200-page document reaffirms their rights, and their rights is very much the same as the able people. So from a holistic and across the world, we have already a United Nations document that encompass the mobility impaired's right in evacuation. I mentioned earlier the ISO 13485, which is for medical device, but it's actually making sure the quality system, there's a quality management system around medical device manufacturing, and evac chair is certified or certifies the product along the 13485. So if we start around the world, we'll start with South Africa. They actually have an Occupational Health Safety Act, number 85, from 1993. And the paragraph 8 of this very act, yes, is actually stipulating the general duties of employers to the employees, to any employees, all of them, regardless of who they are, in providing them with a safe environment, in making sure that wherever they are, however they operate, they are in a safe environment. And by safe, it means that they are able to go to safety in a normal manner. If we move across, still in the Southern Hemisphere, to New Zealand, and perhaps Mr. Menon might have worked with his fellow colleagues from New Zealand. The fire and emergency units over there have a specific document, which again, and it's been reprinted as it says there, it's been updated. And paragraph 27 of this document very much provides the requirements relating to the provision for a place of safety for person who requires specific and particular assistance, very much covering the mobility impaired. In the neighborhood area of ASEAN, the Singapore Civil Defense and their Fire and Safety Shelter Department have a 10-page document, again, very much about fire safety requirements for persons with disability. And it lists very, very accurately what is required and what is expected from the building to cater for persons with disabilities and the evacuation. If we come the other side of India into the Middle East, the government of Dubai and their General Headquarters for Civil Defense, Ministry of Interior, have created a series of documents, including their Fire and Safety Code of Practice. Within that document, there are paragraphs or actual overall chapters that are dedicated to how do we deal and how do we manage and evacuate mobility impaired persons. And it's very, very clearly stipulating that there should be a use, there should be the use provided to and the means to evacuate everybody, including the mobility impaired. Very, very clear. The US have several, and we've picked a couple, the main ones, but there are lots of different documents available or legislation utilized, again, depending on the states, etc., across the USA. One of them is actually driven by the US Department of Justice, and it's about the ADA. It's the American with Disability Act, which was created in the 90s, early 90s. And again, it defines, there's a very, very comprehensive document that defines all the rights of the mobility impaired, including their ability to evacuate building. We talked about the ISO earlier, and in the US, they have the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, who have themselves created a DARAC, a Disability Access Review and Advisory Committee, who has produced a 67-page document that is very much about emergency evacuation and the planning and the guide around that planning for people with mobility impairment. So there are, as I said, there are many more. States vary in terms of what they've added to these legislation. If we take the state of California and their university, they actually have within their operating documents, they very much stipulate the need for evacuation chairs to be used in all their university premises. So it's very strong in some states more than others. Similar to the USA, or along the same page, the EU or Europe have since 1976 looked at equal treatment between all people living in Europe or visiting Europe. This document has had several iterations, with the latest one from 2006, and it's very much again about making sure that there is no difference in the rights between able-bodied or mobility impaired people. So this is a directive for the whole of the Europe. There are several countries adapted in their own ways or have reinforced this directive. So if we take France or Spain or Germany, they actually have gone as far as making sure that in their law and in their legislation, there are no difference, and there are methods to evacuate the mobility impaired. Now, if we now finish the trip around the world closer to where we are based, which is the UK, we know the UK have been pioneer in the what I was talking about earlier, the fire detection and fire management. You know, in 1666, there was this Great Fire of London, which is the legacy of where the industry, the manufacturing comes from in terms of being at the top of fire detection, fire alarm, fire suppression, etc., etc. But alongside this, that's where we're from as well in terms of making sure we can evacuate. There are a number of governmental bodies that are involved in creating this safe for all approach. There was a Disability Discrimination Act that was produced many years ago that has since become the Equality Act in 2010. And it's ensuring that everybody has the right to evacuate. The PIP, as we call it, is a document that every building will have to manage the evacuation of everybody in that building. And there is an official document called a PIP. It covers many grounds, and including how do you, as a building owner, ensure the evacuation of mobility impaired people, personnel, visitors. So this document is available on their website, and every building owner will have to run through this. There's a couple of other legislation that exist in the UK, which are linked, and I will show you the next slide. The Regulatory Reform of Fire Safety Order from 2005. And I'll let you read these very strong words that explain what is the extent of what's covered. So I'm sure the tone of the last paragraph will let you understand where the scene has been set, and the importance of providing a means for evacuation to everybody. So as a summary, these are the 4 points that I wanted to bring back to summarize the presentation. So who's responsible? Whoever's owner, whoever's in charge of a building, they need to ensure that everybody is safe, everybody can behave in that building safely, healthily. The well-being of everybody is important. The mobility impaired are not just the people in a wheelchair, they are all of us today. The evacuation planning, again, the PIP, as we discussed from the UK, but everywhere else in the world, we should ensure that everyone can be evacuated. And the evac chair is clearly proven as the easiest and fastest way to escape a building. So I thank you very much for listening to and coming to this webinar, and I look forward to your question, and I shall pass on to Rama, who will take us through the Indian side of legislation and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Atenay, to give us insight on how the world over people talking about evacuation safely from the building and how the legislation being passed in various countries. I'm sure Britain, being from Britain and the evac is from Britain, we could see most of the building as they have a legislation. I believe they have a legislation and a mandatory to use the evac chair because we always say do not use elevator when it comes to emergency. I have a great speaker today, Aten, and she's, as I said, she's single-handedly working towards making every building disabled friendly. That is Rama Krishnamachari. Rama has more than 3 decades of experience in the field of disability, inclusion, and equality. She's one among the 27 IAAP certified accessibility professionals for built environment in the world. She's one among the 27 in the world. Specialized in the area of disability policy and has undertaken several studies on the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disability and its application in various aspects. She has developed the disability inclusion framework for employment in the corporate sector, which has been recognized nationally and internationally. She has been working on accessibility since 2001 and was part of the campaign that was undertaken by NCPEDP during the visit of Stephen Hawkins to India. She started her career as an educator for children with disability in the rural community-based project of Action for Ability, Development and Inclusion, formerly Spastic Society of Northern India, SSNI. She prepared children with disability for integrating them into regular schools in the villages of Haryana. She then joined National Center for Promotion for Employment for Disabled People, a leading national level advocacy organization. She's headed the legislation, networking, and communication units. She has done Masters in Economics, PG Diploma in Education of Children with Disabilities. Rama was selected for the prestigious International Visitors Leadership Program, which is the US Department of State Premier Professional Exchange Program in 2002. Rama has been advocating and trying her best to put a legislation in the parliament to make every building accessible for everyone. Let's hear from Rama. Over to Rama.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you so much for this opportunity. And I must tell you that when I came to know quite a few years ago about EVAC Chair, I was quite thrilled to see that such a product exists. And whenever I've spoken to fire officers, these are senior multinational companies in India, and whenever we ask them, how do you evacuate people with disabilities, they would say, no, they participate, and we tell them before the mock drill to, use the lift and evacuate. So that is how people have been managing people with disabilities, asking them to evacuate before the mock drill. In fact, it's very important that people with disabilities participate in these mock drills. Another suggestions these fire officers would say is that, oh, okay, we will place them near the exit. I mean, that's clear discrimination. So, very simple thing, this EVAC Chair. In fact, today I feel not just in workspaces and other public places, I feel at homes. At homes, it's such a useful thing. It's not that you need to live in a high rise. Many of our Indian families will live with our older parents, people who need that assistance, even if you're on the first floor or a second floor. If there is an earthquake or, in an urgent time, your lift is not working, you would need that, EVAC chair. So it's a great product, and I'm so glad to be, part of it. I will share my PowerPoint. So I will not repeat what has already been said. It is a huge population, and a lot of our population is aging. There are people who have invisible disabilities, people who have, say, blood disorder, may have fatigue, and again, may need certain support during evacuation. And also people with disabilities are part of our workforce, they are customers, and they are equal citizens, and they need that safety and support like everyone else. And we now have, India has a legislation. It was enacted in 2016. The rules were passed in 2017. So it is very much applicable to government as well as private establishment. And very clearly says persons with disabilities cannot be discriminated on the grounds of disability. It also provides for accessibility, Within 5 years' time, all the existing buildings need to be retrofitted to comply with standards. An accessible place is a more safe place for everyone. And all new buildings need to adhere to standards. Services. It also requires services. If you ask me, emergency is also services. You need emergency services being inclusive to people with disabilities. The timeline was 2 years. We've already crossed the timeline. Plus, there are specific clauses related to protection and safety during disasters. When it is a disaster, first is evacuation, which needs to be inclusive, because whenever we have had floods and other things, people with disabilities have not been evacuated in a dignified manner. Even today, many people will say, oh, we'll carry people with disabilities. I mean, that's not something one would really like, and it's not even safe. So people are carried quite badly. People do not even know how to carry them. So that is not a very dignified way of evacuating. So that is what is happening when left in situation, they're carried in the most awkward way, which compromises on the dignity of a person. Therefore, it's very important evacuation with dignity, relief measures are being accessible, plus rehabilitation measures being accessible for people with disabilities during any disaster. Again, sometimes I said when it comes to disability or even mobility requirement, people think that it's only people using a wheelchair. But our act itself lists some 21 categories of people with disabilities, and each of them would have separate need for, during emergency and evacuation. Just to give an idea of the range, people with difficulty using hands, they also need support during emergencies. Your doors, how do you operate the manual call points? People with vision disabilities, how do they evacuate? Do they know the route to evacuation? What kind of facilities exist in a building for them to evacuate? If they are alone in the office, how do they evacuate safely? People with hearing disabilities who may not be able to hear the hooter, or they may not be able to hear the public announcement system. What measures are in place for them to evacuate out of the building? There are people with intellectual disabilities. There are people who may have certain psychosocial disabilities, or people with medical conditions who may need certain medicines to be taken with them during an emergency, or they may get very anxious during an emergency. So you need to take into account, or may not know the route to safe assembly area. So you need to take into account different needs of people with different disabilities. It was mentioned about people. Yes. So the infrastructure aspect, I will leave it to Ruchira, who is an architect, to speak to you. What is important is that we need to prepare an evacuation plan. One is a general evacuation plan, which is for the building. If you have an emergency number, how does one reach out to an emergency number? And 99% of times the emergency number is a landline number, or is it a 101, 102 kind of a 3-digit number? But you cannot chat. Somebody with a speech difficulty or somebody with a hearing disability cannot use these numbers. How do I send a message? And let me tell you, it's not just for deaf, but say someone is attacking me, I cannot be calling these numbers. I'll have to message. So somewhere emergency numbers should allow even messaging system. Then MCP, manual call points. Many times people, the manual call points are not reachable. They do not have signages. Similarly, information boards, they are not inaccessible for people with disabilities. So you need to have a lot of systems in place to ensure, emergency evacuation for people with disabilities. This will be dealt with in detail by Ruchira. I'll come to the personalized evacuation plan. Personalized evacuation plan is extremely very crucial. What you need to do is that whenever an employee joins, again, I have seen that now the fire norms require the database to be maintained of employees who need assistance. And many organizations do not even have the list of employees with disabilities because they do not ask this question. They don't know how to ask this question. So what happens is that the responsibility is given to the security guard to formulate the database. And what they do is that they look at people, if somebody is limping or somebody, and they keep writing their names. And what they do is that is how they formulate the database of employees. So that is a wrong way to formulate the database, because what we have seen, again, in one of the large companies, there was this girl who had slight limp, and she joined this big company, and the security guard saw that she's limping. He asked somebody for the name, and he wrote the name in the list, and her name came on the list. And what happened was that every time the security guard changed, so the security guard will have to look at the list and go to that particular space to see where she's sitting or something like that. So he would come and look for her and make some mark. She was wondering, why am I being tracked? She thought maybe this company tracks everybody. So she then asked her colleagues, and does it happen to you that every time the security guard comes and looks at where you are and, he's kind of stalking me or something like that? Then she realized that her name is on this list of database, and the security guard's role was to see that where she's sitting so that he can help. Whereas it was not done in a consultative manner. It is very important to create the database, but how the database is created is also very crucial. Have you discussed, you have to do it in participation without, again, compromising on the dignity, because people with disabilities themselves come up with what is the support that they need. Because this particular girl was limping and she could easily hold a rail and evacuate within 3 minutes time. She didn't need any support. And there may be those who may not limp, but may need support. So you have to do a self-identification, what is called a self-identification of people who need support. And then the security officer should get into doing the personalized emergency evacuation plan. And also when it comes to, having people ask me, how many evacuation chairs do you need to keep? Certainly one on every floor. But if there are two employees with disability, or there are 5 employees with disabilities, then you would need that many, because at one given time, only one person can use it to evacuate, because you have to you can't wait for that person to evacuate and bring the evacuation chair. So you need to have a plan so that you can provide the necessary support, including somebody with say, vision disability. There are many times people with vision disabilities do not even know where the nearest fire exit is, or do not even know where the manual call point is. So what is important is that we need to create the PEEP very, very carefully in consultation with person with disabilities, put together every point, not just how to evacuate, but firstly, how would you know there's a fire? Can you hear the alarm? Can you see the alarm? Secondly, how do you alert when there's an alarm? Can you use the manual call point? Do you need assistance in using the manual call point? Do you know where the manual call point? Do you know how to use the manual call point? All that needs to be taken into account. Then comes evacuation. Would you be able to evacuate on your own? If yes, what is the kind of time that you will take? Is that fine enough? Do you need a assistive technology like the evacuation chair? Do you need buddies? What kind of a support that you need? All that will go into the PEEP, which also gets updated every so often, so that the needs change with time. Person may change the location with time, the responsibility of people with disabilities, as well as. So another time I have heard fire officers telling me that, people with disabilities refuse to participate in the mock drill. So how can we force somebody to participate in the mock drill? So if you've not taken the person in confidence and spoken about some of these things, in fact, whenever we have developed PEEP, people have been very cooperative and very happy, saying, wow, we would like to know, we would want to evacuate because we have never seen something like this, and we would like to evacuate, we would like to participate in mock drill. So that is how you have to do it. Somebody with a hearing disability. There are times that today many people with deaf people have missed out the alarm because it is only through a voice. You do not have visual strobes. And I have seen in India, most of the visual strobes are put only in the passage or in the exits. I think people think that visual strobes are for indicating where the exit is. Maybe, yes, that helps, but also the visual strobes have to be in the toilets. The visual strobes have to be in the meeting rooms. Visual strobes have to be in the workspaces so that a person can see that there is a fire alarm. So visual strobes are very, very crucial for people with disabilities. Again, this can be handled through PEEP, so that if there is an employee who's deaf, who's sitting, we know that if there is a visual strobe there and wherever it needs to be, set up. Somebody with medication requirement. Again, it's very crucial that, the person gets the medication. Sometimes what happens, there is a time duration between the alarms going and then you getting back to, back to the workstation. So it's very important that such medications are kept with the emergency personnel so that the person can have those medicines. Buddies. Again, a very important thing that buddies are also provided and assigned the job. They're trained to use the evacuation chairs and other support that the person may need. And person with disabilities themselves need to be trained to use the various, including the fire extinguisher and other, other things that are existing, for emergency. Communication, a very crucial aspect of communication. I did speak about, the helpline not being accessible, or chat is not enabled, or even sign language interpreter is not available in these, when you dial some number, you need to have, everything is through phone. So you need to have sign language interpreter to help deaf people during emergency. Similarly, information in accessible format. That is never given. Most emergency information are somewhere, even in the lifts and all we see it somewhere in the top. You can't even see it. Forget if you have a disability, it is not even readable. It is not even available in any accessible format. So emergency needs to be really thought through and planned very carefully by the fire officers in consultation with disability and accessibility, professionals. Spoke about the training. The training should be provided to, people with disabilities so that they are able to support people with disabilities, whether it is the security guard. See, anyone for that matter, one is very uncomfortable if you've never supported a person with disability. Suddenly asking people to support a person with disability is not correct. So how do you even push a wheelchair? How do you use the evacuation chair? How to open the evacuation chair? You have to practice. You have to train people in supporting people with different disabilities. How do you communicate with a deaf during an emergency? So some of these are trainings that you have to. Every company has these regular mandatory trainings, but very rarely, interacting with people with disabilities or assistance to people with disabilities is provided in those trainings. Last but not the least, maintenance. A very important aspect is that we have seen many things happening. Then you have the fire staircase with the planters kept, or something is not working, evac chair is not even, found. It is in the storeroom somewhere. So some of these are very crucial that maintenance and inspection have to be done, periodically. With that, I will end my presentation and happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rama. We have the question answer after Ruchira
Yes,
finishes
yes,
the
please,
presentation.
please, yeah.
So I would request every member who joined in, if you have any questions, kindly post it in the Q&A box you can find down. And Rama, you did a wonderful job, and you've given so much of insight on what's happening in India and what's going to happen. You said very important, in next 5 years, all the buildings in India need to be disabled friendly. So I think every commissioner, disabled commissioner, need to be educated, need to bring little awareness, and I believe he's given a lot of, is empowered to send notices to the building, those who violate this. I'm sure jointly, all of us can bring much better awareness among all the developers and existing building, and help the occupants to live safely in the building. We will connect again, Rama, over to Ruchira Sarin, architect with 20 years of experience in design. A gold medalist from Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur. Ruchira has been associated with more than 5 renowned architectural and IT organizations in India. She has been associated with diverse consultancy projects ranging from residential, cultural, institutional, hospitality, and commercial for Indian as well as overseas client. She is a member of Council of Architecture in India. She specializes in universal design and leads the accessibility initiative of DIOC, a social enterprise. In this capacity, she has been associated in several prestigious organizations, advising them on barrier-free built environment. She is a regular visiting faculty at Sushant School of Design, Gurgaon, and has delivered lectures on universal design in several other institutions. As part of DIOC team, she has been involved in the extensive study of National Building Code and other accessibility standards to advise government bodies. Apart from this, Ruchira is the principal architect and founder of 2 design organizations called OD2, so OD2 Design to OD2 Green. I think she's a better person to explain on that. I don't know whether I spelled it rightly. Over to Ruchira, we would love to hear you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dominic, for that introduction, and congratulations for hosting this seminar. When we talk about accessibility, emergency egress, you bring people to building, but you need to also think how they will exit in case of an emergency. And that becomes a very, very crucial aspect when it comes to accessibility. So congratulations for hosting this wonderful seminar. I personally really learned a lot from Mr. Menon, from ETN about the evac chairs, which we've been, looking at and we've been recommending throughout our audits. And thank you, Rama, for leaving the architecture part to me, because the architecture needs to also support evacuation, and that's very, very crucial. I still remember from my experiences where, Rama and I have gone and done audits. And as part of our access audit, we also meet people with disabilities and ask them, questions about mock drills, and 2-3 events, Rama has cited, and we've been party to hearing that. And it's so sad that, on several occasions, people with disabilities, they said that, the day mock drill happens in our organization, I'm told to work from home or take a leave. I'm not even part of those mock audits. And I feel so ashamed as an architect that, it's sad that architecture does not support, people with disabilities, or for that matter, now everything we look at with the lens of universal design, something which ETN also mentioned in his presentation, that not all, disabilities are visible. Some of them are not apparent, and universal design just does that. It is, specialized design philosophy where we look at including everyone, not just people with disabilities. There may be occasions where there would be pregnant women, there would be elderly people, there would be children, there would be people, with some temporary impairment who may require that support to exit and to, egress with safety and dignity. That is something that becomes very, very crucial, something which my colleague Rama also touched upon. Dignity is very crucial to universal design. With that, please allow me to share a short presentation about what architecture has to do, or what are the areas that we look at while we make buildings accessible from the lens of emergency evacuation or emergency related features, which is what we do while we are engaged in built environment being accessible. So talking about standards, and I was reading in the chat box, somebody asking this question about, what kind of, standards exist in India. Rama touched upon some 21 disabilities, which are part of the Act. And one may wonder that, oh my God, 21 disabilities, and that, there is also a range. How do we cater to everyone's requirement? The answer lies in the standards. If we apply standards, we may not, face those awkward situations where we have to inform our employees to stay out of, mock drills. If the standards are applied correctly in every area, chances are that not just access to the building, but even egress will improve. So the answer is in the harmonized guidelines, something which is part of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act as well, where they are saying that buildings have to comply with certain guidelines, and these are laid by the Ministry of Urban Development. And then the new National Building Code 2016, which is again, universal design aligned, and the section that we look at particularly is Part 3, Annexure B, and the other relevant part would be the fire chapter of NBC, which would be relevant. So emergency related infrastructure, if we have to look at the areas that we look at, is the reach and the position. So, there are anthropometric standards where a reach is looked at. Often we see, the fire extinguishers are mounted at a point where, it's going beyond 1500 mm, which is beyond reach. Short people who are, on wheelchairs will not be able to even reach such equipment in case of an emergency. How, they are often, used as they are mounted on walls and corridors where they may be a, protruding object or a hazard for people who are visually impaired. Telephones in lifts, often they are, meant or, mounted only for standing individuals, forgetting that they may be a wheelchair user. How do we communicate in case of a fire? So there are two things that we talk about and how architecture needs to come forward and support. One is how do we communicate people about an emergency, and how we then evacuate them in case of an emergency. So when it comes to communication, fire alarm systems, often we see visual strobes are, very close to only the exits, and toilets are left out. I have, had several arguments with even architects across the country who feel that, there is no need to have these fire alarms or the visual strobes in meeting rooms and, areas like washrooms. How would a deaf in that case be, informed in case of an emergency? How would a deaf person would know? Emergency numbers and signages, the PA system which is there, evacuation maps which are installed. None of these, are accessible. Often when we do our audits, we see that, these are areas which are still gray areas in projects. They need to have, everyone, again, they need to be designed with universal design perspective. Emergency doors, how do we maintain them? And the last slide that Rama presented is a site that we often see where, emergency staircases and doors are blocked. I will show you even, some images out of our audits where we've seen even, during audits, we've asked that we would like to see the emergency door, and they were looking helter-skelter for keys. They should not be locked. Staircases. How do we have the emergency exit and the other staircases planned such that they have railings on both sides, they have anti-skid nosing strips? Every level difference has to be captured with a tactile indicator. Are there, railings at 2 levels to cater to people who are short and even, people who are, non-disabled? Then there are, ramps which we need to look at. Are they slatted or not? What kind of gradients are we talking about? Do they have railings on both sides? Do they have landings at the doors? Often at emergency doors, we see that if one is not careful, one would go sliding down a ramp because there is no landing to first, kind of stabilize them when they are egressing. Pathways and safe assembly areas, what kind of pathways are leading to the safe assembly areas? Are they cobbled? Are they, non-undulated? Are they leveled? Are they taking care of level differences? Evacuation lifts, evacuation chairs. Something that I was talking to Etienne before the seminar started was evacuation chairs. The need to have them even in the building lobbies where we have, only a ground floor. We often look for evacuation chairs there as well, because the exits are not well planned. The exit at ground floor will not have a ramp, or they have steps which are badly done. So evacuation chairs come in handy over there. So the first step is to get the access audit done, which is where all the barriers, including emergency related features emerge. And this is very crucial part of the audits that we conduct. So taking a look at few barriers that exist. Here is example of an emergency exit staircase where the railing is not even coming till the end. There are no anti-skid nosing tapes. There are no photoluminescent strips. There is a level difference where there is a loosely kept doormat. Ideally, it should be a tactile indicator. The railing is not continuous in this case. It's just, breaking at the mid landing. It's not going all through. So standards say that these railings have to go from, one level to another, capturing every landing and mid landing as well. Absence of, emergency exit staircase, which does not have risers, like it's an open riser kind of a staircase, and chances of having accidents on such staircases are very high. An example of a staircase which does not have a railing at all, a projecting nosing. This is an example of a ramp that we've seen at exits. Now this is a ramp which is circular, which does not have any kind of railings. A person may just fall while, they are exiting in case of an emergency. A slatted ramp at an exit. There is no railing on other side. The railing is not even continuous on the, the side that it is provided. This is an example of an emergency exit where we saw that the exit is also blocked with some stones. They've used concrete paver blocks to keep the exit, closed. Signages for exits. So this is a, identification signage for an exit, but it has an arrow and it's also mounted too high, like right above the door. A signage like this, what am I to, pick from this signage, which direction to move? Such signages are often, they are a usual sight in our audits. Emergency exit staircase leading to the basement. Without, a person knowing where they need to exit, you reach a basement, which is also a dump yard. This is an example where we saw fire extinguishers being used as door stoppers. So wherever in this building there were, doors with door closures, they went and placed fire extinguishers to be used as door stoppers, not realizing that they could be a barrier for somebody who's a visually impaired person. Exit which has a surface like this. When you egress from that ramp that I was earlier showing, you reach a point where there is basically a grass paver kind of a surface, which is very, very non-conducive for somebody who's wheeling, somebody on crutches, or forget about, people with disabilities, somebody with high heels or, a footwear which will not allow them to run, and, they may just get caught in such surfaces. emergency evacuation plan, which is blocked by planters. So these are usual sites. The plan itself sometimes is, designed in a manner that you are here, or, you can't even figure out where you are located. It's badly oriented. It does not have braille. It does not have raised letters. None of the accessibility features are present in such plans. And then, emergency visual strobes are right at the door, right at the exit. They are not seen all through the office. Emergency evacuation plans are mounted very high. The manual call points are mounted very high, and they don't meet any kind of standards. From where, we assess infrastructure, map it against standards, the standards that I spoke in the, earlier part of my presentation. I'm now taking you through the solutions that exist and how things should be done if they have to be done in a right manner. So talking about, accessible reach or the doors and the signage. So how do we mount our MCPs? They need to be mounted at not more than 1100 mm. If there are fire extinguishers, they need to be placed in niches. If there are, barriers that exist like only steps, then there could be also platform lifts that can be thought through. The emergency phones which are installed, they need to be installed at an accessible height. They need to be even coupled with the induction loop system. If we are informing people about an emergency, then will this, kind of a digital display be backed with a public address system, which is also, designed such that people who are using hearing aids will be able to hear with the background noise being cut absolutely. Visual strobes to let deaf people know that there is an emergency. Even if they are left alone in a toilet, they will be aware that the fire alarm system has gone. Evacuation maps, which are in an accessible format, identifying the exits with braille, with raised letters. So some of the examples of projects that we've done, like this is an emergency evacuation map, which is in an accessible format. It clearly indicates, the route to take. It clearly takes care of, all the information, not just in, tactile raised letter format, but also in braille. So such are examples of emergency evacuation maps, which when well done will cater to, even requirements of people who are blind. Emergency evacuation map, which is installed in one of our projects in New Delhi. Emergency exit signage leading clearly to the exit. And these signages are also, when we reach the exit, are also in a tactile format. They have braille, they have raised letter, and they are also, with appropriate pictograms, the arrows that are meant to be. Another example of the same emergency evacuation plan, which has every information in a raised letter format as well as braille. And all the information is also tactile. A staircase the way it should be, with railing on both sides. The railing is also continuous on landings. There are also nosing strips. There are photoluminescent strips, which are something which is mandated by the fire requirement in India. So these anti-skid nosing strips, photoluminescent strips, tactile indicators at every landing and mid-landing, 2 levels of railing at steps, and then, having a tactile indicator to tell people that they are about to reach a level difference is something very crucial to accessibility. Even having things like braille inscription, something which will tell the blind that which floor have they arrived. The braille inscriptions are seen in this image, and they are present at every level of the building on all 4 sides of the railings. These are other examples of how these, photoluminescent strips glow in the dark. Even the exits have sounders. So when I reach a fire exit, it will start announcing that exit here, and something which, people who are visually impaired, even, in a panic kind of a situation, everyone will benefit from such features. Having an emergency exit door with a long vision panel. So often, drawings come to us where in fire packages, there is a 300 mm by 300 mm door, vision panel, which is raised very, very high. So, one is not able to see if they are short or on a wheelchair, what conditions are they exiting in outside. So long vision panels is something which has to be looked at in emergency exit doors. And not only that, in this example, there is a double leaf door where the single active leaf, if I were to open this and if I, have to exit out and I'm a wheelchair user, I need 900 mm as a clear width of the single active leaf. So that has been taken care of in this door. So long vision, example of a long vision panel fire door as well. This is an example of an emergency exit from a conference room facility. And if time permits, I'll show a small video where people are egressing from this particular exit while they are attending a conference. And this exit has both steps and ramps. All comply with the standards in terms of heights of the railings, presence of railing on both sides, anti-skid nosing tape, tactile indicators at every landing. A well-laid pathway with tactile indicators leading to a safe assembly area. Safe assembly area should also have seating spaces. A pathway which is with railing on both sides. This is part of a factory complex where people navigate along these walkways using handrails as features. Example of evacuation chair, something that we already saw. There are also now evacuation lifts or the fire lifts in high rises, if they are fire rated, could also be used for evacuation. Features like having accessible benches while people are seated in a safe assembly area, or a refuge area, having accessible benches which have backrest as well as an armrest, something which is very useful for people with disabilities.
Thank you, Ruchira. Thank you, Rama. Thank you, Etienne. So we have a few important questions which I would like to take it up, and may I request all the panelists to come on the screen so that panelists get connected with you. And I'll just go through these questions. One is from Kumar. What are the Indian standards available for differently disabled people? I hope Rama or Ruchira can answer. What are the Indian standards?
So there are two standards. There is one harmonized guidelines. I will also put the link in the chat box. Harmonized guidelines has been developed by the Ministry of Urban Development. That is the guidelines mentioned in the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. So that is the guidelines that one needs to follow. Plus, of course, the National Building Code, Part 3, Annexure B, is also has very comprehensive accessibility standards. Third, you also have an ISO standard. So these are 3 standards that you can refer to in India.
Wonderful, wonderful. Anil Kumar asking, Ramaji, I asked about how tough to understand or teaching to a person. I think he must be referring to how do you do a mock drill or training to the discipline, the mobility impaired people. How tough?
It's not tough at all. I mean, it's like you're part of your regular training, like the way you train everyone, but you need to keep accessibility in mind. If you have deaf people, have a sign language interpreter. If you're giving out some information, handouts, if there are visually impaired people, then give handouts. If you're showing a film, have captions. So you have to create your training materials in accessible format. When trainer is training, they have to be sensitive. Some people you can't show the PowerPoint and say, see this, see that. You have to verbalize everything. So it's a skill that you learn. So it is as simple as learning any training skill. You just have to practice becoming more inclusive.
I think Diok has developed certain training material.
Yes.
I'm sure
Yes.
people can access to Rama, or people who don't have Rama's contact can send me a mail. I will connect her so that you'll get this information. The Sheikh is asking, the success of evacuation depends on the management of the organization to provide the facilities, but most of the management is not ready to invest in employees. In this situation, what strategy we have to follow for effective evacuation? I think, Ruchira, you have this answer. He's saying managements are not ready to invest on giving comfort to mobility impaired people? How do you influence them?
I think the cost of penalty is what they should be worried about, because there is a specific section in the law, and my colleague Rama can throw some more light on it, join me into that. Also, what you started, or I think Mr. Menon touched upon, that there is no cost for saving life. So that's how it has to be viewed today. And I mean, there are, we have several cases running in the courts right now where people could not egress in case of an emergency. And the whole, senior management of, developer organizations are, under a lawsuit right now, and they have, huge fines to pay. So we have to be abreast. And 2022 is the deadline when the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, the government has given 5-year time frame, and after which the disability commissioners and the local governments may get very active. So why even reach that point where somebody will come and take an organization to court, and why not adhere to standards right now? Because cost of paying for those fines or fighting that case may be much more than making these changes happen. And moreover, I would say that start from the beginning rather than waiting for a time where one has to retrofit. So if there is a new building coming up or a new project coming up, this would be the time to. Another aspect of National Building Code today is that have accessibility experts in every project. Like we have teamwork in architecture, where it's not the architect who's solely responsible for a project. There would be firefighting experts, there would be people who are HVAC experts, acoustic experts, structural designers, landscape architects, interior architects, like that. Now with the 20 list of consultants, need for having an accessibility expert is also emphasized. This is like, a stitch in time, which will save you 9 later. And a person, a professional who's qualified to look at accessibility will be able to guide you from the inception of the project, right from the brief to the final delivery, that it is compliant. Now it's a compliance issue. So I think compliance is something that the management would keen to address.
Yeah, even for the residents, the apartment which is around 10th floor, and the cost of this, the most least they can have it is an evac chair. The per apartment, even if they spend 500 to 1,000 rupees, the society can come together and put a, if not every floor, alternate floor, they can have an evac chair. It's all the mindset, the will of the person or the society or the developer. They have to add as a feature. And second is consumer. If I want to buy or if I want to occupy a premises, or whether it's a rental or something, these are the checklists that I must check whether what is the accessibility. So this need to be educated, and we have to enlighten these people that before you buy an apartment or when you occupy any tall buildings, ensure these lists are fulfilled. These are the demand. Recently there was a fire in Mumbai, which is almost $2 million is the apartment cost. They were having all kind of luxury, name the best of best brand they had. When there was a fire, they never had a water to fight the fire. And one person has to jump out of the balcony and die. And there was no, forget about evacuation chair, there's no water in the building. Now, how do we train? You spend 8 crore rupees worth to buy an apartment and you live without safety in the building. So the consumer awareness has to increase, saying that it is your right to ask. It's a right to demand this. So I think working with the government, working with the agencies is very important for us, and ensure that we all demand and get the right to stay safe. Okay, I'll move on to the Vishal Bora. All the science chairs, are these available in India? Of course, these are available in India. All these signages and also chair sign is also available. What the cost? Definitely you can come back to us. We'll let you know that. And Abin Thomas, question to Madam Ruchira. Can you please explain the number of egress route required based on the occupancy, also the width requirement?
So that's different for every building, and it's a vast topic. I would leave it to the codes, because there are specific requirements for different building typologies, for a residential building to an institutional to a assembly building. There are several requirements. However, very briefly, the width that you are asking for, minimum width has to be 1500 mm for any staircase which will take people through the exit route. The minimum width from railing to railing has to be 1500 mm. However, one has to refer to the fire chapter, the part 4 of NBC, to have specific occupancy load vis-a-vis the building typologies and the egress number of egress route requirements.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruchira. Here is Satyaki Roy asking, how a critical ill patient admitted in ICU in hospital, attached with saving gadget, ventilator, evacuated in emergency? Who would like to take this question? Etienne, for you, how an emergency patient, full of IVs and fluids and ventilator, how do you?
Dominic, I can take this one if you want.
Yeah, please, another gentleman from UK, the owner of EVAC.
If somebody's in ICU, what they generally have is under their mattress, they would have an evacuation blanket, an evacuation sheet, and they would remove everything at the same time. So the sheet goes under the mattress, and the staff accordingly would lift it up and take it away with them, along with all their connections and drips, monitors, etc., etc. That's assuming that's a different type of evacuation that Etienne has been talking about today. So the hospital would have their own procedure, but generally it'd be done by what they call an evacuation sheet.
Oh, yeah, what Ian is saying, this is for everyone. Apart from the chair, there is also evacuation emergency sheet, mat, I would say, emergency mat available for the ICU patients, where they can put them the way they are in the bed, and they can pull out. So if you visit the website of EVAC Plus Chair, you will find those details there. A question to Albin is asking question to Etienne. Is this model is suitable for Indian emergency exit stairs? The width and the clearance is not meeting the standard requirement. Do you have any studies? And can you unmute, please?
Yeah. Say that again. Sorry, Dominic. What was the question again?
The model, the chair, is suitable to Indian emergency exit stairs because width and the clearance is not meeting the standard requirement. Do you have any studies? Rama, is there anything that you can add? Our exit?
So I think the width of the wheelchair is, the evacuation chair is quite narrow. I think 500, 600 mm, correct me if I'm wrong. It is not, it doesn't occupy that much space. It's quite a narrow thing. And it is, we have installed it in quite many places, and it works very smoothly in the Indian standard. It is quite narrow.
Chandranshu Sharma is asking, does any standard or guideline specifically says to conduct access audit? This to Rama, is it a mandatory compliance?
Yes. So the National Building Code of 2016, part 0, and also the maintenance part tells that periodic access audit needs to be conducted. Periodic access audit, because it is not enough that you conduct audit now, because 3 years hence, there are many things that are evolving in the accessibility plus the maintenance part of it. Therefore, periodic access needs to be conducted. It is mandated by the National Building Code.
Wonderful, Rama. Anil Kumar is asking, can you explain the evacuation standard time? Is there any standard time? Evacuation standard time?
Standard time?
Standard time. Standard time to evacuate people.
think about it also depends on the size. I've heard 4 minutes. That fire specialist would be able to save 4 minutes is what I hear. But
They're between
4
2
to
to
5
4 minutes is what they're
Yeah.
expecting
Yeah.
us to
Yeah.
evacuate. Okay. Carol Sharma is asking, which are the acts, mandatory practices applicable in India for mobility impaired person? Any particular guidelines for healthcare institutions? Rama,
It is not
what you say?
specific for healthcare. The RPWD Act, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, clearly mentions that hospitals, including private hospitals, should be barrier-free. So therefore, it is a mandatory for health institutions. There are no specific guidelines for health institutions. However, the harmonized guidelines apply to health institutions as well.
Kumar, I think you got an answer. You're asking, like India in the Disability Act, American in the Disability Act, which are the standard? I think Rama responded to that question. Hope you got it. And everybody well appreciating the presentations and the knowledge that we have shared today. This is just the beginning of our.
There is one question regarding training video. Can we have Indian Sign Language? Yes, it is a must. When you are doing any training video, have captions, have sign language interpreter. There is a box that you can include of a sign language. Unfortunately, you didn't see Ruchira's presentation today. It had a sign language interpreter. You have to have those. And if there is any quiet or silent kind of a thing, have audio descriptions as well to make sure that people who are visually impaired can also understand, the what is not being spoken.
Yeah, Chandranshu Sharma is just letting us know that National Building Code is a guideline, not a mandate. Should we consider its requirement or a compliance? I would say most of, whether it's a NABH, whether state act, say follow the National Building Code or National Building recommendation, and most of them implement state-wise, they implement. I would say, yes, it is a compliance that you need to meet as per the National Building Code to get whether NABH or even NOC of the building, you need to meet those standards.
RPWD Act. Also the RPWD Act. You have to comply with the RPWD Act.
Wonderful, wonderful. As I said, this is just a scratch, it's a stepping stone. It's a baby step that we have taken. I want to thank EvacChair UK for taking time out to educate us in India, the importance of evacuation that is being practiced in Europe and North America and other country. As Rama and Ruchira was saying, next 5 years, every building need to be disability friendly, which means retrofit is a huge demand. It's not only for evacuation, everyone has a place to play an important role in making the building safe for everyone. So it's just a stepping down. As we progress, we continue this series on evacuation. And I wanted to thank Rama, one of the most busiest person in this field, and Ruchira as an architect. Yes, and I'm so glad that they accepted with just one message that I know how they committed, because the response shows how passionate they are on the subject, how committed they're on the subject. Again, I want to thank our welcome address given by our former director, Ashok Menon, whom I appreciate for bringing the mandated to use EvacChair in Goa. And I want to thank Ian Thompson, the director of EvacChair from UK, and Etienne, my good friend from UK. Thank you very much. I'm sure you got some taste of India. India is in progress list, and India will probably meet all the European standards and American standards, as Modi ji always insists that we need to be the role model to the rest of the country. And I'm sure with that message, strong message of our Indian government, we will be the leader of the tomorrow's world. Thank you very much. Wonderful
Thank
to have
you.
you all.
Thank
Look
you
forward
so
to see
much,
you again.
Dominic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless
Bye.
you all.
Thank
Thank you. Look forward to see you again. I will share this video to everyone, and it's a learning process, and we'll come back to you again with another session on evacuation. Thank you very much.
Sorry,
God bless you.
Dominic. Dominic, sorry, I could not be there.
I know, I
I just
understand,
finished,
sir.
I just finished the appointment with the doctor for my daughter. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. A lot of appreciation for conducting such a important, and your message on emergency evacuation as well appreciated. And I think since you're the most qualified person on emergency evacuation, we need your continued support to all of us here as a panelist and the participant. Tell us, how do we reach to the government? How do we make it push a legislation and make it mandatory, especially the disability commissioners, the power to them also.
Yeah. I'll be happy to be a part of this resolution, and we'll see how we can make it, take it forward.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The Fire Safe India Foundation also can contribute a lot on this.
Yes, yes, of course, of course, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ian and HNA will look forward to see you in India. I think Ruchira will be able to, she's designing many buildings. She said designing a building with, 100, how many campuses, I think she was talking, referring
80,
100 chair, 300 chair, something.
So all in all, 200 buildings.
200 building, yes.
which are
Oh,
under
wonderful.
being- So I'm an accessibility expert, I'm an architect, but for last 12 years, my focus has been on accessibility, more than a decade, along with Rama. And there is a huge opportunity because, something which was not seen earlier, and how Rama mentioned that she was surprised to, see for the first time that a product like this exists. Now we see it more often in our audits as well. But something which we are pushing even the base builders or people who are developers to have these as part of their kit, and not just place it in a BMS room, have it in every lobby. So there are about more than 200 buildings pan India, which we are looking at right now, and that is the amount of work that needs to be done, and it's only a fraction.
Very interesting, and I'm sure we'll be able to meet soon. We'll be able to go across borders and gap the distance and meet and have a interesting conversation going forward. Yes.
In Goa, we have made it mandatory to have the evac chair in all commercial and hospitals. I think Mr. Dominic would vouch for it. We need to make it as a mandatory regulation. The NBC also need to work on those lines. I think Dominic should take the lead and send his comments to NBC.
Yes, sir. Being part of the NBC, I've already given a recommendation to Mr. Deri and the team, and we will continue to do that, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you once
And
again.
please share the recording, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I missed
Of course.
Ruchira and Rama. I heard Ethnic speak, but then I missed the other two eminent speakers.
Sure, sir. I will put it on YouTube and share the link to all of you.
Thank
Ian, great to have you. Great to see you. And it's afternoon time. I think lunchtime in UK.
Yes.
You have a wonderful weekend and have a good fun day.
Yep. And on
Thank you,
behalf of
Ruchira.
the-
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
thank you, Dominic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I have time to go.